It's been a while.
Wow, that's cool.
Well, this is my program. I tell people all the time. I pay for it. I say what I want, the way I want to say it, and I ain't got no evidence, so I can, I try
The
to
Voice
so I go through
17104.com.
this.
This is Zanetta Wingfield, and you're listening to The Voice 17104.com. The Voice 17104.com. Welcome to Did You Know? Podcast, your host, Richard Utley, dedicated to the African American viewers. The program is aimed to celebrate African American culture and deal with the real and relevant topics that impact the everyday lives of the African American community through frank and insightful dialogue with local and national influencers. Every day, there's another horrible, discouraging news story, directly or indirectly, impacting African Americans. But we need to look at the shining stars in the galaxy of Black America. It is time to tell our story.
Good evening, and welcome to another Did You Know? Well, where I'm going to get started today is, first of all, I want all of you to understand that you got to always keep the eye on the ball of things that's going on. Because if we don't, then we're going to be in trouble. I've been watching the news and seeing all kinds of things that's taking place. A lot of it's in Pennsylvania, but a lot of it's also across the country. And as you know, this is called Did You Know? One of the first things that you need to know is that a lot of times we've always had conversations that we don't work together. People of color don't work together. We don't support one another. And I thought it was ironical. You remember back the incident that happened in Montgomery, Alabama, when the young man told the group of guys that they had to move because they were going to dock another boat, and they beat him up, and we rallied around and helped him and protected him. That was good. And it showed that we can do unity. And it shows that we can do certain things that I think that we should do. So if you take that from what I just told you, I would hope what it says is that maybe when people say that we have a lack of unity, maybe we're starting to have unity. And what I mean by that is maybe we should take that opportunity to start building from it. And when I say that we should start building from it, that means that we should turn that around and start to develop that unity in the Black community into economic development, into education, and have teachers tell real history, and also make it safe for people to live in our community, in our streets. They should not be afraid of carjackings. They should not be afraid of muggings. And they should shop in Black-owned businesses. So maybe this is a start of something that we should build from. And I want you to think about it. Because too often, we've been saying this for a long time, we don't support one another. Well, we need to support one another. How are we going to help our community grow if we don't support one another? I'm a big believer of economic development. I'm a big believer that we have to help in our community, because I've said it before and I will continue to say it. A lot of our young people have twisted and turned and made some bad mistakes. So all of a sudden, when it's time to get a job, that simple mistake comes back to haunt them. But you understand it. So maybe it's us who should give them an opportunity for another chance. Because I'm looking at all of you out there, every last one of us. We've have always not been perfect, whether you want to believe that or you want to tell somebody that. And we got to give young people opportunities, and we got to praise them, and we got to tell them they are somebody. I used to always be fascinated by Jesse Jackson's little thing that he always say, I am somebody. I am somebody. And that was one of my inspirations. Then he would say at the end, I am somebody. I should be loved and protected because I'm somebody. You are somebody. I'm somebody. And we need to tell our young people that they're somebody. And of course, I'm going to bring up, it's important that we tell our senior citizens, hello, how you doing? Make them feel important. Because who else is going to do it if we're not going to do it? Before I go into my Black history part, because I've been telling you that we need to know our history, and if we don't do it ourselves, then shame on us. And I'm sure that many of you are aware that the Birmingham bombing in 1963. Now, some of you may think that ain't that long ago when you think about it. But I found that the Supreme Court Judge Brown Jackson was speaking a couple weeks ago, and she urged us not to forget our painful history. It's important of learning from our past. Think about what she said. It is important of learning from our past. We cannot forget because of the uncomfortableness. We can't do that. We have to know what happened, with the idea that if we figure out what happened, that maybe it might not happen again. So I would think that if we learn from our past, maybe we'll know that it won't happen again. But if you know history, and I'm a person that understands history, sometimes history repeats itself. And sometimes I hope that you do your history and it'll help you out. So, okay, you're probably going to ask me today what words I'm going to give you that I want you to figure out. Carter G. Woodson. Find out who that is, because I'm not going to tell you who it is. We need to do our own research. I'll give you Jesse Owens. Who's Jesse Owens? I want you to know people that's not all doubly famous. A lot of them are famous. And that's why I recommend that you go back to your community, your neighborhood, and find out who the trailblazers are. Find out who that man is. Find out who that woman is, who made life better for you in the community that you live in. Sure, I can bring up Frederick Douglass. I want you to look him up. Or W.E.B. Du Bois. Some of you will know who he is. And I have to say, some of you do not know who he is. I get trouble because with all this here whole thing coming up with and you all know about it when we talk about COVID-19 and COVID this and COVID that. And a lot of you have a tendency to talk about things that you don't know, but it makes it sound good to you. And one of those things that has always bothered me, I hear people say, well, I don't take this shot, or I don't take that shot because of the Tuskegee experiment. And I'm willing to bet you, half of you who say that have no idea what it's about and what did it mean. But you use it because you heard it from a negative standpoint. And there's no question it was negative. I'm not going to go into it and give you the whole thing because I think that you should do your research. But I will say this to you. During the experiment, there were 399 black men, mostly poor sharecroppers from Alabama, who were led to believe they were being treated for syphilis, while the doctors and nurses involved were actually trying to supposedly find a cure, but they was giving those blacks fake medicine. They wanted to see what would happen to them. Now, isn't that something? That experiment lasted from 1932 to the time it was exposed. Guess when it was exposed? 1972. See, it's not that long ago. And then on May 6, 1997, President Clinton issued an apology and said that the government was wrong. The government was wrong. There's no question. But I want some of you who like to use those excuses why you don't take a particular or whatever shot it is, but you use that. And there's no question the government has not always been right when it comes to health care for Black America. But at the same time, we know it's still not good. We know that it's a disparity there, and we need to work on it, but we need to protect ourselves and get involved. So those of you, you need to go to the, I sit on the board of Hamilton Health, which is a public health center, because I believe in health for people, so I sit on that board. But I think that a lot of you should utilize it. Don't wait till the last minute to get checked up. You know, high blood pressure, diabetes, that whacks us out all the time. And we wait to the last minute. So I'm going to say to you tonight that you need to step up who you are and what you're about. You need to reach out. You need to reach out to that senior citizen. You need to reach out to that young person and make sure that we're trying to do the best for them. And that's why I said to you, we don't understand our history. Like I just said, I brought up the Birmingham bombing, and probably half of you don't even know what that is. But you need to find out why. Why you need to find out about the Birmingham bombing, and then I'm going to bring up something else. Because what's happening now? Seriously, what's happening now? I mean, seriously, what's happening? People going to the dollar store, going to the supermarket, and people are shooting them up because of their color. And I'm going to leave you with this. Just think, before George Floyd, there was a Rodney King and an LA riot. Think about that and do your research. You know, on my program, always, as you know, I try to bring people on to tell their story, to tell you who they are, because I am a big believer, if we don't define who we are and we don't tell our stories on who we are, then shame on us. Because I get tired of watching news, and it's usually 2 seconds or 2 minutes, and it's usually negative about us, or it's about sports. And we just have so much more going on for us. And we just have so many people out there that's doing so much. And so I try to go out and bring people in to tell their story. So I got a brother on tonight. He's a heavy brother, Brother Jobe. And let me tell you, we're going to talk about cybersecurity tonight. We're going to talk about the importance of it. And I wanted him to come on because I wanted you to look at him and understand this man's important for what he's doing. He's going to give you a message of the importance of things, of how he sees cybersecurity, especially in our community, because we walk around and we don't really understand it. But at the same time, maybe see somebody say, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it. That's what Did You Know is about, to being exposed to things that you may not be exposed to. So, you know, we're going to get into nitty gritty here. But before we get into nitty gritty, I'm going to let him tell you who he is, where he came from, and what he's all about. But before I do that, I told him this is not a I got you kind of thing. You know, when he came in, I was like, look at the brother's dapper, as you all see. He's a very dapper brother, and that's wonderful. When he came in, he was so dapper, it almost made me want to go home and put a suit on. But I didn't. I wanted to stay to who I am, true to who I am. So, Brother Joe, tell the audience who you are and what you're about.
All right. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I'm from Lithonia, Georgia, which is about 30 minutes east of Atlanta. If anybody heard of Stone Mountain in Decatur, it's right next door to those cities and towns. So from Lithonia, Georgia, born and raised. Most of my family is there. I have a lot of family in Florida, but most of my folks reside in Georgia. Graduated from high school in '95. Graduated from college in 2000, and moved up to Harrisburg probably about maybe 11 years ago for my career in cybersecurity as well, and just started elevating myself in after promotions and so forth. Now I'm senior manager at a prominent organization, and so here I am today. And the reason I mentioned 2000 is really important. That was kind of what got me started into this field. So I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Y2K at the end of turn of the millennium. 99 to 2000, computer systems where everybody thought was going to go offline, all the zeros and ones. So when I got my first job as a clerk at a major law firm, um, a lot of the paralegals didn't know how to work the computer systems, and everything at that point was migrating from paper to databases. All the pleadings, all the journals, all the notes was going into the database. They didn't want any part of that. So since I had just graduated, they were like, "Well, give it to the young guy because my major was pre-law. I wanted to be an attorney first and foremost. Then secondly, my minor was CIS, computer information systems. And so after they knew that, they were like, well, give it to the young guy, let him manage the databases and keep those up to date. And so that kind of got me started into that technical field. And there was a guy that worked in a law firm. His name was Jay Doherty. And all the attorneys used to go to him all the time. It was like, hey, we need this from Jade and so forth and so forth. I was like, man, I want to be Jade. Like, he is the guy that's obviously a really big wig in his law firm. And so that's what kind of got me started walking down the path of the technology field and the path I wanted to go down to.
So, people, when they talk about computers, when they talk about all of this stuff, you saw the need, but at the same time, but what, tell me this, what kind of gave you the foundation to get to where you are now? And the reason I ask you that is because sometimes people want to do things, but they may not have the foundation to do it.
Right.
So what gave you the foundation to get where you are and what you wanted to do? And even though I do understand, because I'm one of those people, when they said that things was going to change and the world might end and the computers and when 12 o'clock came, everybody's waiting on the clocks to spin around.
Yeah.
So I am aware of that. So what made you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to step up to this and I can deal with this?
So to understand that question, you have to understand my family. So
Okay.
My mom is a real big advocate of do whatever you want to do. She's always preached that. She was like, do what you want, explore your mind, be open to a lot of things. You can do whatever you want. And what's crazy is I didn't grow up in a house with a computer at all, which was really the reason why I wanted to minor in computers, because I didn't have one. So I was always fascinated with how they work, what do they do, and so forth. So college was a great opportunity for me to really get a chance to explore different avenues. And really the foundation, really what my mom put in me was like, when you go to school, get your education, don't play around with it, really explore and learn things. And I always fall back on that because she was the one who really instilled that in me. And like I said, really computers was just something I wanted to learn on my own, just something that I wanted to learn. What I wanted to do was go to law school. So that was really what I wanted to do. But actually, what ended up happening, I fell back on that skill set of learning the computer systems, and that's what really propelled me into the future. And I didn't even know that was something I was even going to use, because I really was just using it for myself to learn how computers really work and what they do and how I could benefit from it just personally, but not use it for a career.
I would like you to go back to what you said about your mother. And the reason why I want you to go back and I want you to iterate that is because so often nobody has given a lot of young people hopes, dreams, and visions. I mean, and I just think that sometimes we fall short of that because for whatever reason, somewhere, somehow, they set the bar so low. And they set the bar so low that we don't have the dreams and the visions and the hopes. And so would you go back and just say what your mother said? And the reason why I want you to go back and say what your mother said is because I want somebody out there to hear that. And I want them to translate what you said to maybe someone else.
Yeah. So it's kind of two-part thing. My mom would always say two things, and these kind of go simultaneously, hand to hand. So she would always say, explore your mind, open your mind, and do whatever you want to do. You have the capacity to do it if you put your mind to it.
Okay.
So don't limit yourself. But at the same time, she would also say, you have to have a good attitude. She's like, your attitude is going to take you a long way. So she used to always say, fix your attitude, Make sure you have a good attitude out in this world. Because remember, when people meet you, that's what they know. You are a representation of yourself. And if your attitude isn't right, they're going to immediately dismiss you, even though you're a good person. So you have to have a good attitude. Once you have that, then you can explore different things, and then people will give you the opportunity if you have a good attitude. But if you don't have a good attitude, the opportunities won't come.
Okay, so you took your mother's advice.
Yep.
And so you went to school and you said, I'm not gonna fool around.
I'm not gonna fool around.
So what made you decide that you weren't gonna fool around? What else triggered you? Even though your mom's voice was in your head, but we all been there. So what kept you from zigzagging?
Well, so actually, it's a story. So
Sure.
I received a track scholarship for school. But what a lot of people don't know is that in the ninth grade, I actually flunked some classes. So so at that point, I was really on a bad track and a bad trajectory.
Okay.
And then my mom was like, listen, you have got to straighten up. If you want to go to college, you got to get your grades right. You got to get your stuff in order. So that was in the ninth grade. Flunked 2 classes, I had to go to summer school. And she would cuss me out every day on the way to summer school, dropping me off to summer school every day. So I was like, I'm never going to do this again. So 10th grade come around, started made the honor roll. Junior year, made the honor roll. And so by the time I graduated, then the athletic scholarship started coming in. Then I was able to compare the two together, and then I was available to get a scholarship, because at that time you had to have a certain score on the SAT, you had to have a certain GPA, obviously, to get admitted into college. And so from that point on, that's really where the foundation started of like, when I go to college, I'm not going to play around with it, because it's an opportunity for me to use this opportunity for something in the future. And that's exactly what I did.
So in ninth grade, you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
That wasn't focused.
You weren't focused.
Nope.
But you realized you weren't focused, plus your mom didn't help you not being focused. But sometimes we all out there don't have moms or fathers, but some of us out there in the community need to tell young people that they need to focus because of the importance of focusing. You know, I hear kids all the time tell me that they're athletes, and they tell me, or something else, and they say they want to go to college and they want to go whatever, but they've never prepared themselves for it. They wait till their senior year, the last semester of their senior year, and then they say they want to go. And what you're saying is, there's people out there that has hip cups, including me.
Absolutely.
But what you said was you took that and you said, okay, I need to do better. And I'm going to work better because where I'm trying to go in the long run.
And not only that, so just as a caveat to what you're saying, she also painted a picture for me. And she was like, if you want to do well in life, whatever well means, everybody's definition is different, it's all relative. But this is not going to put you on a path to success of what you want to do. It's just not. And then another thing, fast forward, what she also did, and my dad actually. So every summer I would come home from college. Every summer I would come home in June, and my dad, he's a truck driver, and I would work on the loading dock, and I absolutely hated that job. But what he would do, he would say, you're going to work here every summer from 4 in the evening to 11 at night, and then you're going to realize what hard work really is. And so I did that every summer, and it was out in the sun. I worked in the sun every day, Monday through Friday. And I was so tired when I got off that I would sleep to the next day when it was time for me to go to work. And so she was like, now you understand what you can be doing if you don't stay focused and stay on the right path. And that's kind of another thing that kind of instilled me. Was like every summer I would go home and work. And I was just ready to go back to school because I hated the job. But also at the same time, the people on the dock was be like, now you understand why you don't want to do this every day. And that was like the continuation of staying focused in what I wanted to do.
I think the story, what you just said, is important, and I thought of someone else. And I remember watching, and many of you in sports know Jerry Rice was a great receiver for the 49ers. Now, when they were talking to him, they said, well, what did you do? And he said, my father was a bricklayer, and I had to be up on there, and he would throw me the bricks. And he had to develop catching those bricks Plus, he knew he didn't want to do that hard work.
Right.
He knew that's not what he wanted to do.
Right.
So what you're really saying to my audience is that take the opportunities to help build and grow, because down the road, you want to make sure that you end up at the top. And the problem is, too often, we don't tell young people that. And a lot of times we make young people feel they don't have to do it. Now, would you agree with me? And I see it, maybe I'm wrong. I've experienced so much now when I meet young people and they tell me what they want to do or how they want to do it. They want instant gratification. They think that I want it now. And I'm looking at them and saying, you know, it took me a long time to get to where I got to.
Well, I always say, putting stuff in the microwave, food in the microwave is pretty good, but it's always better in the oven. And the oven takes a lot longer, and sometimes you need it to bake in order to get it to cook thoroughly and full all the way through. Anybody can put it in the microwave. Anybody can do that. It tastes all right, but when you put it in the oven, it's a whole different flavor because it's seasoned, it's sat. That's the difference. Sometimes you got to wait. Sometimes you got to be patient.
And I'm glad that you said that, because you know, I can look and see some of the people that's on the podcast watching, and I see quite a few educators on here. And I'm sure some of those educators are saying, they've been saying it too, but that's why I have people like Jobe on, so that he can say it and they can look at him and they can see that he is just like them. You know, you were a little fortunate because you had parents that saw it a different way. And it may not be that way, but that doesn't mean that we in the community, or we can't really enhance our young people and telling them the story. Because one thing about bringing people on like you talk the talk and you also walk the walk. Which is very important.
It is important.
Now, you said that one of the reasons you got it because you didn't have no computer.
I didn't. There was no computer at home. I didn't have one. The only computer I had experience with was in high school, where we took typing, and that was it. And that was my only affiliation with it. So I said, you know, I really want to learn about it. I mean, I saw it then; it was just gonna just expand and evolve, and I wanted to kind of just know what it was. What was I played video games and all that, so I love video games, but I didn't have a computer. So that's really why I majored. Why that was my minor, and I wanted to learn how the different programs work and the hardware and the hard drives and how that worked. And like I said, I wasn't experiencing or expecting that to really be a part of my future, not in a career, but just something I just wanted to know for myself personally, which was why it was just my minor.
So you got involved, and so we're gonna take steps of your career. Okay. So then your first job was in the law firm.
Yep, that was in a law firm.
And they stuck it to you and said, hey, you got this, and
right.
you said I gotta figure it out.
Yeah, so again, it was in 2000, the 99, 2000 change of the Y2K, the databases, and at that time, at least in that law firm, there was a huge shift from going from the paper format to getting everything scanned into the databases. And the paralegals there absolutely hated it. Everybody wanted to kind of just stay with the old paper way, but as you know, things have to evolve and you gotta have a better way of organizing, your work. So they put it in the databases and no one wanted to do it. So they're like, well, hey, just give it to the new guy. He has a minor in computers, give it to him. And I was like, okay, fine. That's wonderful for me. So I started managing the databases, getting everything organized and stuff like that. Started learning a lot about SQL and the database at the back end of it and stuff like that. So that's just kind of what I did. I was kind of like a DBA, database administrator, and so I would organize the databases, put all the documents there, and scan it, organize them, put it in separate rooms and everything like that. And that's kind of what kind of got me started into like the computer career. That was kind of my track. I didn't even know it at the time, but that's kind of where everything started right there.
And so after that, where did you go next after you kind of learned that from the law firm?
Yeah, so I left that law firm and went to another law firm and kind of did the same thing, except I kind of got a bump and I was kind of junior paralegal. And from that point on, I started doing a lot of electronic filings, like electronic filings in like Pacer, LexisNexis. So I started doing all those electronic filings too, in addition to managing the databases as well. So once I learned that, and then I moved on to another law firm where the attorney I was working with left and went to another law firm, and I went with her. And so I was doing more of the same thing there. And then that's when I got introduced to something called e-discovery at a new place. So once I started learning more about e-discovery, which is the electronic discovery of documents, when you look at the special documents and how they coordinate with one another, that's when I learned that skill set. And then once I learned more about e-discovery, which actually is from a friend of mine, he gave me a book. The book was a little orange book. He said, "Man, e-discovery is going to be the future. You got to immerse yourself in it." I had no idea what he was talking about, but he gave me this book. That's when I really started getting really involved in e-discovery. And then from e-discovery, I started learning about imaging, digital forensics. And then once I got involved in digital forensics and imaging and stuff like that, then I got into IR, incident response. And then from that, it turned into cybersecurity. And that's just kind of how the track worked. All that back from managing the databases back at the law firm.
Ooh. So then you moved on, and then you came this way.
Came up here. Yep. Came up here. Yes, sir.
And of course, what is your real function where you work at? So you deal when you do cybersecurity has a big wide net.
That's an umbrella, correct.
So could you kind of break it down a little bit for the audience, so they, because we always hear cybersecurity, and then we're gonna also talk about, because we all get, somebody done got your credit card number or something.
Yeah.
So could you pretty well just elaborate that for us, please?
About cybersecurity?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, cybersecurity is, to keep it simple, just the security of information. So information, assets, data, and so forth. How do you secure your information, your devices, and networks? So now we're expanding it from, the regular person, your information, which means your social security numbers, credit card numbers, your name, your PII, personal identifiable information, all that's associated with you. And what happens a lot of times is once you get a piece of that, so once I get your phone number, then I can kind of piece together, okay, what's the address? Okay, once I get the address, then I can probably find like your cell phone number. Then from the cell phone number, then I can probably find out, okay, this person, stays here. Then I can probably find out, just based off of that information, then I can probably find out where you work. And then you start piecing together parts of the puzzle about this person. And so that's called PI, personal identifiable information. But the key is to protect this information, those golden eggs. And so from an organization perspective, then you have your IP, intellectual property. You want to protect those things. You want to protect your networks and all that stuff, because again, once threat actors, APTs, advanced persistent threat actors, get into these environments or get this information, then that's when you can start doing like the social engineering. That's where you can start, spoofing people, putting together these fake email sites and links that people click on to grab your credentials. So all that's part of cybersecurity, securing that and safeguarding that information.
Well, how do you? I hear what you're saying, and I've been a victim of it.
Right, we all have. Everybody has.
I've been a victim of it,
Yeah.
and you swear them down, you're not going to be a victim of it.
Yeah,
But they, like you say, they may send you an email. It looks so official,
Right.
and you really think it's official,
Right.
and you better react to it.
Right.
So you're saying people need to be
They need to be cognizant and aware of that. So there's a few things you can do. So in order to, so let me be clear. Social engineering is the number one vector in regards to collecting this information. So, and they do it by sending out these emails, spoofing you, calling you, saying they're help desk at some organization. Can you give me your, social security number, so forth. That happens a lot for the elderly community. Unfortunately, they fall victim of a lot of that kind of phone social engineering. But so basically one way to combat it is one thing that happens a lot is a lot of people like to use their debit cards a lot. That's very popular. But what you should do, if you can, you need to use your credit card. And the reason you want to use your credit card as opposed to your debit card, like at the gas station or at, local, drugstore or grocery store and so forth. Because what happens, these threat actors put skimmers on these devices and they can collect that information. And what happens is the bank, they can reimburse you more with the credit card. It's a lot easier to turn that around because it's not really tangible money because they can give that back. But when you have your debit card, which is tied to your account, it's harder to get that tangible money back because that's actually spent already. The credit card money is not spent yet, so it's not really the same. So one piece of advice I can tell a lot of people is use your credit card as opposed to more of the debit card. And that's just one example.
Well, give us a few more.
I'll give you a few more. Okay.
All right, give us a few more. Hey, that's why I got you. So you could. And not only I got you so you could tell us all that.
All right.
And at the same time as you were saying it, and you turned to me and you said, sometimes senior citizens are a little bit more vulnerable. Yeah. And I must admit, they got me once too.
Yeah, no, it happens, man. And no one's immune to it. But so another thing you want to do is, I know it's really convenient for us. We have Facebook, we have Yahoo, we have Instagram, all these social media outlets, and it's easy to use the same password over and over and over across the platform. But once one of those passwords or those sites gets compromised, then look at it this way. Then once that site or your password is compromised, then if you use the same passwords for everything else, then all your other accounts become compromised. So if you have different passwords for different accounts, I know it's hard to keep up with it. I really do, but it will behoove you and it'll benefit you in the long run. That and also using a complex password. You don't want to use, your name 123. That's easy to break because they have a lot of algorithms that a lot of threat actors use to break those easy passwords. So what you want to do, you want to personalize your password. So like just say, for instance, you're at home, your dog name is Rusty, and you stay on, Blast Ave, and your first car was a Cadillac. You may want to combine, Rusty, Blast, Cadillac, and then throw a number and a wild card. You can remember that because it's personal to you, and that's a lot harder to break. So, because I know you're like, well, I don't feel like writing the password down, but you can memorize those three things because it's personal to you. So hopefully that's another good one too.
Okay. All right. So, your job, you do many things. So, let's talk about, you do, like you say, digital forensics.
DFIR, DFIR, digital forensics incident response.
So what is that?
So digital forensics is basically anything that's digital, like your computer, your laptop, your phone, anything like that, security cameras. So that's digital. So what I can do, or what I do, is I take those items and basically investigate them and do analysis on those items. I collect it, extract the information, and start doing analysis on. Incident response is basically responding to an incident from an organization. So I don't know if everybody's been keeping up with, what's happening in Las Vegas with all the casinos being hit, with all the ransomware attacks. Someone has to respond to that incident. So that's part of what I do as well, as I respond to those incidents from those organizations and find out what's going on in the organization, how to eradicate it, how to contain it, and then how they can build the systems back up. And so we can move forward with a nice, clean system. So that's part of what I do. And another thing that I do as well is, so that's the reactive part of it. Now I'm doing something that's very proactive, is telling them before, this is the things you can do to prevent yourself from getting breached or hacked. And then another thing I can say is that if and when you do, because no one's immune to it, these are the steps you can do that's going to make it a lot easier for you to move forward in a nice, smooth manner once you have been breached, if you have these controls in place.
Okay. And we're going to continue to go on the things that you do. Network analysis.
Network analysis.
So what is that?
So basically when you have, every device or computer is tied to a network. So look at it as like a spider web. So your network, or let's just say if it's your Wi-Fi at home, it's on a network, right? It's tied to the network that you have. So when you go home and you connect to the Wi-Fi, now your phone is connected to your Wi-Fi, which is part of your network. Your laptop, when you go home, you connect to the Wi-Fi, now it's on the network. So what I do, network analysis, is I find out the everything that's connected to the network, do the analysis for it, and find out what's going in and out of that network. So what happens a lot of times at home and in organizations, you have people or threat actors that are scanning the environment, finding out what are the vulnerabilities tied to that network. And then once people find out those vulnerabilities tied to their network, then you expose them. Then you leverage those vulnerabilities. So what I do is find out what are those vulnerabilities, how can we shore that up, and then how can we move forward with this is something that you can do moving forward. This is some of the policies you need to implement to make sure it's definitely going to be right moving forward. And then I also do something that's like analysis on it. I could say, okay, you're getting information in from China or Russia or so forth. This is an IP that's associated with that. Maybe you want to put that on a white list, or blacklist, so you can kind of just deny it, or deny list, so forth like that. So just kind of helping organizations and individuals kind of shore up that network as much as possible.
Okay. Also, let's see what else you do. Data recovery.
Data recovery.
And data collection. What is it?
So data recovery. So let's just say when your laptop go out completely tomorrow, you try to log. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have experienced it. You log in your computer, all of a sudden it crashes. You get the black screen or the blue screen, and you're like, something's wrong with my computer. I am the one who can actually recover the information off that damage or that laptop. So basically, I can pull the hard drive, or the SSD now is what we have, which is solid state drives, which is very small, which is more secure now. So I take those out of the device. Then I'm able to recover that information off that, because we're like, man, I had my pictures on there. I had my work resume on there. I mean, I can't even get to it now. I'm the one who can go in and actually extract it. Well, let me say, not every time I can get it, but pretty much a high percentage of the time I'm able to recover that information off the hard drive and give it to the individual.
Whew. What about, I got a whole list here.
All right.
Electronic discovery.
E-discovery?
Yeah.
So
E-discovery.
E-discovery, that's something I spoke about earlier. It's the discovery of electronic documents. And basically what that is it happens a lot in litigation. So when you have someone that says, hey, I'm looking for a document that, where this person may have said something about, or they stole some intellectual property from our company, and there was an email about it that's circling around. Can you go in and try to find that document or that needle in the haystack? And so what I do is I start searching around, doing a lot of keyword hits, looking at the history between who the individuals were, and then I'm able to narrow that down and actually pivot and find that specific document that the attorneys or so forth are looking for, which is the discovery of electronic documents. So yeah.
I'm gonna go back to personal. What would you tell my audience in terms of telling young people what they should do to help prepare themselves to kind of want to be like you?
Just be curious. That's really what it is, because at the root of it, I'm an investigator. I'm a licensed investigator. I have to be, because I got to go across state lines to investigate a lot of these investigations. So really what it is be curious. If you're curious and want to know things, then that gives you the ability to tinker and play with things and figure things out. Because once you start tinkering, that's the best way for you to understand what you're doing, because there's no better way of learning anything than to do it. People can tell you what to do, then that'll leave you. But if somebody show you what to do, that'll stay with you because you're actually doing it. So if you're curious and just have a sense of understanding, what exactly is going on, and you're willing to just take the opportunity to play with it, that is really what it is. Because I work in a lab, and that's what I do, is I play with a lot of different things to understand exactly what it's doing. So be curious first and foremost, because if you're not curious, then you probably won't be successful, because it's going to get old with you really quick. But if you're still curious and inquisitive, you're going to continue and stay at it all the time.
I mean, because I think it's important. That's why I have this program, because I want people to see you, what's exposed to it, so people can say, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing it. Because I've come to the conclusion you may not want to do it because you've never been exposed to it. And that's one of the things that I think that, as you say, be curious. You know, there's things out there that people could do if they just thought about it. And that's why, you know, I wanted to bring you on. And you know, a lot of times people get afraid of words, whether it could be cybersecurity, they could be afraid of computers, they can be afraid of a lot of times change. Even when I started, and you know, we went from paper to computer, there were people that I know that said, you know what, I'm gonna retire.
That's true.
I'm gonna retire because I don't want to learn how to do this. I mean, I will even admit to you this: getting a new phone can be a pain
Yeah, it can.
because I've got used to it. And give me a new phone, all these gadgets, then I can't figure it out.
Right. Right.
So, with your advice to all of us, I want you to talk to senior citizens for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be afraid, right?
No. Well, so my mom calls me pretty much every day about something that's going on a computer or the iPad. That's what she uses. She's always asking me, how do you do this? How do you do that? Because she's curious. And I tell her, I fill her in exactly what this is what you need to do. I walk her through. And the key is, man, when you're dealing with adult, you need to be really patient. And don't get frustrated with it. Just be really patient because they really want to learn and they want to know. But what you take for granted, your knowledge is something they just don't know. So be patient and work with them as much as possible. Well, my name's Jobe, so I am patient. But at the end of the day, I just remain patient with her and the elderly in regards to asking me questions. And I actually want people to ask me questions. Like, ask me as many questions as you want. And I may not know everything. If I don't, I'll find out.
But I think you bring up a point. Sometimes young people are not patient with people that are because they know it,
Right.
And they tell you it real quick, blah blah blah, and if you don't get it, then they get upset with you, and then they get upset with you, and then you get frustrated. Right. So everybody's frustrated.
Well, it's because it's muscle memory for them. Like what they do, they do it all the time.
I know. I see them.
It's just what they do. But again, they take that knowledge for granted because it's like they expect everybody else to know that, but it's not the case. That's why you got to exercise some patience, some grace with some people.
So young people, you heard that out there. You got to have some patience with us.
Be patient.
Just be patient. It might take us a while to get it.
Yeah, but once you got it, you got it. Then you can leverage that information to figure out other things because, again, once you figure out how to work that app, then once you figured out, okay, this is how this works, then you can apply that to the other application, the other app, because now you have a foundation of information because you know that. So now then they won't call on you as much because like, oh, okay, I can figure this out a little bit. So it gives you analytical and problem solving skills as well.
What about this whole thing? Put your credit card on your phone.
Right.
Now I was going to a game and Ticketmaster sent electronic. Then I had to figure that, and then I had to go in and all of that, and then
right.
And when I got there to the game, I was afraid. I said, let me make sure that I can bring it up, so that they can scan it, and trying to make sure. I mean, those things are becoming.
Well, that's just the way. That's evolution.
Okay.
That's just how it's going to be. That's just the evolution. I mean, so you can either learn it or evolve with it, or you're going to get left behind because these places aren't printing tickets anymore.
Yeah, I know.
They just aren't. So they're sending it to you electronically, digital format. So that's another thing. So you really need to have your phone, which is why, phones are nothing but small computers. That's all they are. They're just mini small computers. And you walk around with a computer on you all day. That's what it is.
I see people, now matter of fact, I went to the game and they don't take money.
No.
They want cashless.
Yeah.
And then, now I might have a credit card, but then there was somebody that had it on the phone.
Right. No, that's just part of the evolution. I mean, so you can have the credit card or you can use, the digital money and so forth that you can use on the phone. the Apple Pay and all that stuff. You can just scan it. It's just the convenience and the evolution of the monetary system, how we move forward and how we pay for things. That isn't going away. It's only going to continue to evolve.
So you're suggesting it's going to be that way?
It's going to be, it would behoove people to learn how to do it. Because if you don't, then you're going to really be left behind in regards to the thing. Because if you want to go to a show or something and they're going to send it to you electronically. And if you're waiting for a hard copy ticket, that's just not going to happen. But some places at these stadiums, they don't even take cash anymore.
That's correct.
Right. So it's like, what are you going to do? If you want to eat something, you want something to drink, you're going to have to use something. You want to go to these sporting events, you're going to have to pull it up on your phone.
Because even at some places I've been, they don't take cash. And you have to they got machines. You put your money, the $20 in the machine, and the machine pops you out a $20 credit card.
Right. Yeah.
That's
just how it is. Unfortunately or fortunately, however your perspective, how you want to look at it.
So what would you say to young people or vision, because you're a visionary, what are some of the things that you would say that they need to do to help prepare themselves the kind that want to go in to the field that you're in? And I'm assuming that you have to have some discipline.
Well, in anything you want to do, you got to have discipline. Whether it's my field or any other field, whatever it is, you have to have some type of discipline, period. So that's first and foremost. And you have to enjoy what you want to do, whatever that is. No one says you have to be X, but if you don't enjoy it, then you're not going to excel at it. Mm-hmm. So you got to have discipline and you have to enjoy what you ultimately want to do. And if you don't know, then find out, figure out what that is, be exposed to different things, find out what that is. Then when you find that, then you can start to dive into exactly what it is. Now, my field in particular, what I would tell someone is that I would tell this person, anyone, to really learn any language, programming language, preferably Python right now. That's it's not the new thing, but that's just something that would be very beneficial. And just understand how computers work. Just know how, play around with the computer, get on these applications, understand how they work, and just be curious about it. And I will tell you the evolution that's going to happen in regards to computer is going to be AI, artificial intelligence. That's where it's actually going right now. Now, right now, there are no safeguards around it. It's just kind of the wild, wild west. But AI is going to be huge in the future. So if you want to learn anything in regards to cybersecurity or technology, AI is definitely where it's going to be.
Could you explain to the audience AI?
Yeah, artificial intelligence. So basically what happens is that, so I'm sure everyone's heard of ChatGPT, where you type in, can you give me, whatever you want, can you write me a letter about whatever? And you type in what it is on ChatGPT and it spits it out. But that's artificial intelligence that's giving you that information. Now, one thing you got to realize, artificial intelligence, it's all based off of data and information that is fed. So if the information is being fed as garbage, then it's going to have garbage out. So really, that's kind of the downside to AI right now, is like, what information is it feeding off of? What is it pulling from? Because if it's not pulling from but half the information, then you're going to get half the information that the output is. But if it's pulling from a larger group of information, then the greater the output is going to be. But eventually AI is going to be so advanced that it's going to pull from so many different sources that it's going to be really legitimate information that it is spitting out. And that is where it's going to be really, really scary in the future for years to come.
Is that why even with the Hollywood strike, they're concerned about AI?
Exactly.
Is because why? Because instead of them being able to write the script, they'll go in and say what they want and it'll spit it out.
And it will spit it out. Exactly. It will spit it out. Now, of course, there has to be some human involvement to kind of massage the information, but really the foundation of what is spit out is there, which that's why, like you said, so the writer's strike in Hollywood, that's kind of what they're afraid of. But again, it's only limited to certain information. So really, I wouldn't worry so much about it at current, but in a few years, once it starts feeding off the larger database of information, it's going to be something to deal with in the future. That is for sure.
How do you see that as looking at it from a humanistic situation?
Well, the issue right now is that there's just no safeguards around. Like anybody can use it. You can type it in, and it's just going to spit it out. There's no policies surrounding it. So, like if you go to your job, someone who does something that's on a computer, you could just type it in, and it could spit out your work for you. It really can. Now, morally, I think that's wrong, obviously. But as we know, everybody don't have the same moral compass. So, so at the end of the day, AI is definitely something that needs to. I think everybody in every organization needs to have some type of AI awareness surrounding it and safeguards surrounding it. Because if you don't, then the people that are using it are going to be able to use it in a way that you might feel is not effective or immoral. And then you need to apply some safeguards and policies surrounding AI, because let's be clear about it. It is not going away. It's only going to evolve and move forward. So you might as well figure out how to use it in a positive and efficient manner than to not use it at all, because it's going to creep in at some point in the future.
Of course, the time is moving very quickly, and I'm going to ask you to do two things. I'm going to ask you to found on some things that we haven't talked about that you think the audience should be aware of.
Okay. So one thing that's really big is IoT, Internet of Things, right now. So you have your devices, your microwaves, your refrigerators. Everything is hooked up to is IoT. That's Internet of Things, which basically essentially is connected to the internet. So it's open to the internet. So one thing that I would advise people on, or kind of give them some information on, is say, since it is tied to the internet, that means it is possibility of being vulnerable to the internet and the people that are associated with the internet. So I would say make sure when you use these devices, they come with basic security codes, passwords, and so forth, and they're really basic. Those passcodes are online that anybody can pull up. So when you have your, Alexa or your TV or even these cars, there are basic passwords that are found, and you can find those vulnerabilities. So I would advise people to change those passcodes to something that and not just the basic passcodes, the company passcodes. And then I would also say you want to tie that into have it go through a VPN, which is a virtual private network. And then, so you just don't want to leave it openly exposed, which a lot of people don't. So you want to have all that go through your VPN. And then also I would tell people to also leverage multi-factor authentication, which is two-factor authentication. So it's like when you go into your bank, you do online banking and you type in your username and password, most people can just get in at that point. But what will probably be beneficial if you use a two-factor, multi-factor authentication, where it's like, hey, now you put in your credentials. Remember, credentials can be compromised, but what can't be compromised is not as hard as the second authentication, where they send an update or a passcode to your phone that you only have, and then you type that in. That's a two-factor authentication. So it makes it more difficult for your information to be breached and for you to be compromised.
So that's why a lot of times when I've gone and stuff, they'll say to me, I'm going to send you a number. It's only good for
30 seconds
30
or something.
seconds.
Right,
You
exactly.
got to go in.
And you got to go in and change. Exactly. That's another layer of security. And what they'll say, do you want me to send it to the device that ends in, to have it grayed out and have like 1, 2, 3, 4, which is the last number of your cell phone. So they don't want to give you all the information, but if you're that person, you're the only one that have your cell phone. And that's why it kind of makes it more secure, because it's only your phone, not the person who's trying to impersonate your phone.
Okay.
So multi-factor authentication is huge, so definitely leverage that.
Okay, anything else you want to share? Because the time is running here.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. Like I mentioned the credit card, use that as much as possible as opposed to the debit card. It's a lot easier to get things, to get your money back in regards to that. Then, like I said, I can't reiterate, if I'm not the person that's going to tell you to change your passwords on every site, because I know there's a lot of sites, people are on social media all the time. But if you're going to, first I would say don't use the same password on all the sites. But if you're going to do that, at least use something that's very difficult and very unique for you. That's just not easy to authenticate and pass. Please do that.
Okay, well, we're gonna close with this. What your mother said again.
Oh, well, she said a few things, but she said stay focused and make sure you have a good attitude. And also, if you want something, you got to work for it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. I hope the audience has learned some things from this gentleman, as well as a lot of you can be Joe. That's my point.
Well, be better than me. Be better.
That may well be true, but I want them to be exposed to who you are. So thank you for tuning in this evening, and I'll be looking to see you first Tuesday next month.
Thank you for joining the Richard Utley Show on The Voice 17104. We will be here on The Voice 17104 every first and third Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Once again, thanks for viewing. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Richard Utley, and we welcome your questions and or comments.
Glad. I hope you got some out of it. Man, like, I don't know if I really like him as a person, but a lot of his ideas in terms of technology, like he can open up AI.